So you've probably already heard Hank Green, the very successful and well-regarded internet science communicator. Hank Green got kind of caught by his audience relying a little too heavily on generative AI to research and possibly even write some of his videos. I think this is a deal, but it's not a big deal, especially considering how Hank has handled the fallout and considering the reservoir of goodwill he has built with his audience over the years. I do think this incident offers an opportunity to examine how we are setting and enforcing editorial standards within the fact-based media business online, especially in video form. What are the professional standards for doing the kind of work that Hank Green does, that I do? And how do we reprofessionalize journalism and other kinds of informational public communication as those businesses have reconstituted here on social video? Or do we even want to reprofessionalize those fields? That is the main thing that I have written about for you today. But first, let's talk specifically about ChatGPT and the like. I do think that large language models have some utility as research tools. They're not nearly useful enough to justify the massive, catastrophic misallocation of capital into highly speculative AI businesses that will never make enough money to return those investments, and the financial crime, the mendacity and or the negligence that has inflated the AI bubble is a global scandal that will hurt all of us, especially here in the United States, where we have already spent a huge chunk of our national wealth on this last-ditch harebrained scheme to save our country from decline and eventual irrelevance, like the Darien scheme. Scotland, at the turn of the 18th century, invested a fifth of its national wealth to found an American colony in what is now Panama, thinking correctly that the Isthmus of Darien, the narrow point between the two American continents, that would become a crucial choke point for global trade. They were right about that, but they were about 200 years early, and they all died of malaria, and Scotland had to be absorbed by England with the Act of Union to settle its debts. AI is the United States' Darien scheme, I fear. And large language models are not useful enough to justify all of that, but they can be useful for research. Sometimes I will wonder, hey, have any scientists studied how cooking affects the pH of onions? And I'll go looking in the research literature, Google Scholar, etc. And sometimes I can't find anything. So I'll ask an LLM that has scraped the entire internet, and sometimes the AI finds me a source that I missed. Yes, cooking does lower the pH of onions, the chatbot will say to me, usually with much more confidence than is warranted by the actual findings it is referencing, and sometimes it outright mischaracterizes those findings, and often it cites sources that I do not regard as reliable. A post on Quora is not on the same level as a peer-reviewed journal article. I have found LLMs useful as a means to find primary sources, but of course, that's really all they should be used for when we're talking about researching the published record of all human knowledge. The LLM is a secondary source. It is at best a directory through which you can find primary sources of information, which is the same lesson that everybody had to learn about Wikipedia, and it's the same lesson they taught us about Encyclopedia Britannica in the library at Park Forest Elementary School circa 1992. In situations where accuracy really counts, you cannot rely on any secondary source. You must use it to go back to the primary source where the claim originated, so that you can scrutinize the reliability of that scientist or that eyewitness or whatever. And so you can give them credit for learning what they learned, or so you can make them accountable for being wrong instead of you being held accountable, and so that you can prevent the inaccuracies that inevitably result when you make a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. When a primary source is summarized by a secondary source, and then another source summarizes the secondary source and so on, the game of telephone like that always scrambles the details. All of these reasons and more are why we always go back to primary sources when accuracy counts. And if someone is going back to primary sources, then I don't care whether they get there via Encyclopedia Britannica or Claude. Either is fine. That's one obvious ethical principle for responsible LLM use that I am pretty sure about. Here's another thing that I'm still kind of kicking around in my head. I think it may be my position that a professional communicator should not use AI for any routine writing purposes. If you're a professional communicator and you don't already have very strong feelings about what you want to say and how you want to say it, then I don't think you have anything worth publishing. No one needs you to read a chatbot output for them. They can read it themselves, thank you very much. The only thing that I want to hear from you is what you have to say. And indeed, that is the only product of any potential value that you have to offer. Anything else is just like slapping your brand onto a commodity. That's great work if you can get it, but it's not something that I would feel good about doing, and it's certainly not anything I want to buy. If you don't have strong feelings about what you want to say and how you want to say it, then you probably don't have anything of value to communicate. And asking the computer to write something for you does nothing to address that core vacancy. I wrote the script that I'm reading right now myself because I know a lot about what I want to say. I wouldn't want anybody else to write it for me, let alone a computer. Also, because the act of writing this helped me to work through my own thoughts. Writing equals thinking equals writing. If you outsource your writing to a computer, you outsource your thinking to a computer. So, my provisional position on LLM use by people in my general line of work is that it's fine if you treat it like any other research tool to lead you to primary sources, but the LLM ought not fabricate any substantial amount of the stuff that you're selling, because that's like me slapping a vinegar leg logo on generic brand jar sauce and then selling it back to you at a steep markup. That's what I think, and I think that's what Hank Green thinks. And may we all try to live our lives in accordance with our beliefs a little bit more today than we did yesterday. Anyway, I'm wandering all over the place today, which is what you are able to do with Saley, sponsor of this video. Saley is an eSIM service app. Lauren and I drove over the border to Quebec at the beginning of the summer, and every time we forget about the phone problem. Oh, wait, are we roaming now? That'll cost a fortune. Turn off your phone. But the phone is giving us our directions. Should have had a Saley eSIM. If you're traveling, you choose a Saley data plan for any of more than 200 destinations that they have. You activate the eSIM before the trip, and when you land in a new country, your new data plan activates automatically. No roaming. Saley has eSIM plans for people on cruise ships, hence the name. Set sail with Saley. It's not their slogan, that's just what I'm saying. Download the free Saley app, choose the data plan that's right for your business or for your travel plans, and be sure to save 15% with my coupon code AdamRagusia. Or just hit my link in the description, Saley.com/AdamRagusia. And of course, there's the QR code there too that you could scan. 15% off Saley data plans when you tell them that I sent you. Thank you, Saley. Anyway, the whole Hank Green thing got me thinking about my own mistakes and my own little controversies as an ostensibly responsible informational social video creator. Does YouTube count as social video? I think it's an edge case, but I'm going to put YouTube under the social video umbrella for the purposes of this discussion today. Many of the mistakes that I've made and that Hank Green has made, many of these mistakes could have been caught before they went out the door. Many of these mistakes could have been addressed prior to publication by a more traditional, professional, editorial process, the kind of process that used to be standard operating procedure in the fact-based media business. Really, I think the principal sin of my YouTube career is that I never really professionalized this operation, even though I probably could have afforded to. Like, I could have afforded to hire a professional script editor, maybe some food science grad student who also knows something about good writing. Such people exist. I could have found one and paid them a salary. And I maybe could have had another layer of review with a freelance senior editor, somebody really seasoned who is in the consulting phase of their career, perhaps after getting laid off from a lofty position. Such people exist. I know many such people. I could have paid such a person a flat fee to give me a final edit on everything that I have published. This would have cost a lot of the money that I've made on YouTube, like maybe even half of the money, since I think I would need to pay that technical editor quite a lot to retain them. And if I did retain them, I think that they would end up wanting to get into the production side, the video editing side, eventually maybe being on camera, and that person would probably end up my partner in this business. And I don't want a partner for many reasons, but maybe too bad, buddy? Maybe that's just the cost of running a real grown-up business? Here is the message in a bottle that I wish to send to future media historians. Some of us who are living through this early boom cycle of social video right now, some of us know that we're living in a Wild West period, a pre-1929 stock market period, a period of really rapid business growth with a tumorous gold rush attached to it, and a period of vast, effective lawlessness and normslessness. We're in the period where a technology-driven disruption of the mass media business has brought about the collapse of old systems of professional ethics, which legitimately need to be rethought and rewritten for this new world that we're in. But until we do that en masse, as a community of professional media creators working on social video, until we come together to develop and enforce new, updated professional norms, until we respond to some collective crisis by pledging to endorse and to abide by a written code of professional ethics, until Mr. Beast finally does something so bad that costs him very dearly with his audience that he needs to be able to publicly endorse and commit himself to some written professional code of ethics. Until that particular exigency or one like it arises, we probably won't come together to build a professional community institution that would draft such a code of ethics and put it to a vote by its members and assign a standing ethics committee to review the ethics code with various layers and phases of community input, and to revise that ethics document every 2 years or something, until we as YouTubers, as aspiringly responsible social video makers of all kinds, until we form a trade association for the same reasons that most other profitable industries have formed trade associations before us, until we do that, probably in response to some big crisis in trust. Until we build that institution to draft and maintain a professional code of ethics, among other things to serve our professional community, until we found the International Association of Content Creators, and there is at least one effort underway to create such a thing right now, until we professionalize like that, our industry is in a period of relative lawlessness and or normslessness. And in such periods, you generally see some level of disinhibition. We can all get away with so much right now because the rules are still hazy at best, and bad actors are all around us and among us, setting the ethical floor for the social video business squarely on the 7th level of hell. I mean, how much more cynical and irresponsible could you get than the worst engagement bait content that's flooding the internet right now? Because that is our current business environment, it's easy for somebody like me to do the easier thing, which is to run a 6-figure annual media business without employing or contracting with a single professional editor. Mind you, I'm not talking about like a video footage editor. I'm talking about a content editor, a person who reviews the content for accuracy, for clarity, and perhaps style. An editor who stakes their own professional reputation on the quality and the responsibility of the content that they edit. Most people who used to make a living writing or talking seriously about or photographing or otherwise documenting with media stuff that is happening in the world, most such people who did that for a living one single generation ago, most of them usually had professional editors overseeing and signing off on their work. A lot of us don't have that right now. Many because they can't afford an editor. Some of us because we're enjoying being relatively early to a raging party with the parents out of town for some undetermined amount of time. A lot of us are just still so happy to be free, to write and say what we want without having to get daddy's permission. We're still so thrilled to be out on our own, making it kind of big, all without grown-up supervision. At some point in this growth cycle, you have to admit that you have become the grown-ups, and standards will only exist if they are upheld by the grown-ups. Because there's no one else to do it. That's what we call growing up, when you realize that there's no longer somebody else in the group in charge. It's either you and your group who's in charge, or no one's in charge. We haven't matured that far as a community of responsible content creators. I haven't matured that far individually in the work that I do here. It should be said that some content creators have long explored these frontiers of professionalization or re-professionalization of the media business. The Green Brothers have made so many quality, responsible videos in collaboration with named, credited professional content editors. And then they've made some other things without as much editorial review. Hank Green made a thing, or a few things, that were not professionally up to snuff. And it's logical to speculate that these missteps could have been avoided or minimized with more layers of professional editorial review, like we used to have almost uniformly in the fact-based media business, because the fact-based media business runs on trust. You don't have to trust all the content creators whose work you consume. Sometimes you just want to sit around and watch an amorally violent action movie, and sometimes you want to sit down and scroll shameless, cynical brain rot on vertical social video. You don't need to trust the people who make that junk for you. But if you are consuming content where the people are talking about real things happening in the real world, you need to have some level of trust in that person who is talking, or else you're not going to listen to them. If they're just making stuff up to maximize engagement, that has no value to you, so you probably won't consume it twice. In the world of media scholarship, we used to call such content fake news. Not slanted news, not biased news, not propagandistic news, but fake news. Claims that people literally just make up and flood the internet with as part of some kind of low-margin cash grab scheme. That's what we used to mean by fake news. But then in 2016, Donald Trump appropriated the term to describe news coverage that he perceived as unfavorable to him. And the term became useless to media scholars. I suggested calling it counterfeit news instead. You know, counterfeit, a product that is made to look like it has value, but in fact has no value at all. Because if a piece of media that's about the real world isn't real, then there's nothing for you to learn from it, and so it is useless to you. This is a trust-based business that I'm in, that Hank Green is in, that a lot of us are in. And public trust is not binary. It's not something that you either have or don't have. You can have some trust, but not a lot. You can have a lot of trust, but then lose a little, etc. A public figure or prominent professional builds an account of trust with the public over time by doing quality, responsible, dependable work. The more good work you do, the more you prove yourself, the more trust that you accrue in your trust account. And when you do something that undermines the public's trust in you, as I have done, as I'm pretty sure everyone has done at least once to some degree, all have sinned, when you make a mistake of craft, or a mistake of taste, or a mistake of professional ethics, or perhaps even a moral mistake, when you shake that bond of trust with your audience, your balance of trust in the bank goes down. But it goes down in an amount roughly proportionate to the public's perception of the severity of your offense against them. And that outflow of trust is debited against the balance of trust that you have previously built up, which may be a considerable sum, perhaps a sum that dwarves the debt incurred. I think that is what generally happens, and what should happen, and what will happen when a public figure errs, as we all have, to widely varying degrees. My point being, some have tried, are trying, will probably try soon to do more professional work on the internet. And I'm not going to attempt to define professional media work here, but I think that one obvious element of professionalism in fact-based media is some layer of editorial review. That is, I'm pretty sure, one of some debatable hazy cloud of attributes that would naturally define professionalism in media. There are some trying to re-professionalize the fact-based media business that lives here on these internet shores, where some lucky few of us washed up and colonized and thrived with some combination of skill, moxie, dumb luck, and cynicism. That fact-based, trust-based media business that lives on in some mutated, evolutionarily bottlenecked state here on the internet. There are some people who've tried or are trying to professionalize that media business, which I happen to be in. But I'm not really one of them, am I? If I think that professional, supervisory, and to some extent adversarial editing from a professional editor, if I think that is some basic element of a professional code of ethics that should exist and may one day exist as a commitment that one must make, at least implicitly, for access to some segment of the media market, if I think getting an edit is a necessary condition of professionalism in the fact-based media business, then why don't I hire an editor? I could afford one. I couldn't pay as much as I maybe could have justified during my peak earning years, COVID basically. I couldn't pay as much anymore, but I could still pay a fair market rate to a professional editor on a consulting basis, freelance. But I don't, because I really don't want to. Because I'm still enjoying being free. Because I don't work well with other people, at least not on the project level. Because I work odd hours, and I usually work right up against my deadline, in part so that my channel can be more responsive to current events. And yeah, I don't want to hire an editor because I don't want to share the money. Even though I do have more than I need right now. I'm too worried that it's all going to collapse one day, and I'm still kind of hoarding treasure to bury and dig up if and when my fortunes inevitably reverse. And right now, I can get away with not having an editor, because my audience does not demand it. And I'm not a member of any professional association that recommends it. And the legal system has not yet prompted me to institute an editorial review process, which would help me to demonstrate to the court that I did my due diligence in, for example, a defamation suit against me. That's part of the reason why the old fact-based media had editors, because they reported unflattering things about real people, and they occasionally got things wrong. And you're more likely to lose a defamation suit against you if it seems like you've been reckless with the truth. If you can show that you have editors who are at least theoretically enforcing some written code of ethics, even if that process occasionally produces an inaccurate result, if you can show that you have a process, that can improve your position in a legal dispute about your content. That hasn't happened to the likes of me yet on the internet, probably because we online content creating micro-celebrities represent a wide field of small little legal targets, as opposed to one big juicy legal target that you can sue, like the New York Times or whatever. That practical legal reality is probably another reason why someone like me hasn't professionalized, and why someone like Hank Green is kind of semi-professionalized. Some of the work he publishes has serious editorial review, and some of it seems to be stuff that he's just kind of dumping from his brain straight to the internet, the way that I usually do. And there's one more reason. I, for one, still wonder if we will actually need as much editorial supervision in new media as we had in old media. Because editorial supervision is not an end unto itself. The function of editorial review is to be a self-correcting mechanism within the fact-based media business. That function can be performed in different ways by different people. It may not be adequate, but the comments do represent a self-correcting mechanism in the online media business. Rapid, voluminous, public audience feedback has demonstrated some efficacy as a quality control instrument in new media. When I'm out there on the internet and I see someone making a claim that I'm pretty sure is hogwash, there's usually at least one or two top comments pushing back on it, including on my own videos. Rideshare drivers don't need a professional association to enforce standards within their industry. They need a union to represent their interests in disputes with rideshare companies who are profiting handsomely off of their labor, but rideshare drivers do not need a professional association to set and enforce norms, because the rating system takes care of that. Good drivers get good ratings from their riders, and bad drivers get bad ratings, and you can see the rating when you choose to accept a driver or not. It's not a perfect system. It can be abused. But so far, it seems to be working pretty well, I think. We don't need editors for the sake of having editors. We need accountability. And the internet does bring some measure of accountability to the people like me and Hank Green who do business here, through comments and Reddit threads and the controversy sections in our Wikipedia bios, all of that. The question is whether that accountability is enough. And how do you define enough? Enough for what? Well, enough accountability to maintain the level of trust necessary to have a successful fact-based media business on the internet. That is the cold economic answer to the question. And I guess we're going to see what the answer is. For myself, I'm not ready to commit to hiring a script editor to review the accuracy and taste and style of all my work here before I publish it. Maybe one day something will happen where you demand that of me. But that is not today, probably. I'm semi-retired. I'm old and tired. Overtired for my age, honestly. Maybe it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. And I'm honestly not interested in doing my best work most of the time anymore. I don't want to half-ass anything, but I do occasionally, quarter-ass some jobs. Sometimes I just tell you what I suspect to be true, instead of calling up a bunch of experts and telling you what they think is true, which would be a more valuable service for me to provide to you. Frequently these days, I take the shortcut, and I just tell you what I reckon is going on with some news story or with some science question, which is a debit to my trust account. But I make a little bit back by being transparent about it. Like, I'm honest and upfront about the fact that I'm old and tired and a little lazy at this point in my career, at least when it comes to relatively inconsequential topic areas. I'm very careful to cite my sources, even when the source is just my own intuition, especially when the source is just my own intuition. I make an effort to tell you that, to explicitly distinguish between things that I think are true and things that are proven true, or things that are widely believed by experts to be true, or things that are believed by some particular expert to be true, but not by others, etc. I'm pretty good, I think, about explaining my epistemology as I go. And I think that earns me back a little bit of the trust that I lose, so that when I quarter-ass a job, it's effectively like I'm 1/8-assing the job on the adjusted trust index. And that is apparently good enough for you. You're still here for now. We'll see what levels of professionalism are necessary to thrive in this market in the coming years. And of course, we need not look at this through the dehumanizing economic lens, where we're all just rats in a changing maze, responding to the dynamics of the maze according to broadly predictable behavior patterns. That is the economic lens, if I were to describe it uncharitably. If we look at this through a humanistic lens, we can say that people have free will, people have power, and they can choose to exercise that power to try to get what they want. If you want more, better, fact-based content on the internet, regardless of what that market seems to want economically, well then, form an association. Yes, institutions and norms are collapsing all around you right now. That's the scary part. But the exciting part is that you get to try to rebuild. Maybe Gen Z will be great institution builders, like the World War generation was. Maybe Gen Z's annoying, incessant moralism is a very natural response to the amorality and the outright immorality that they see being practiced and rewarded at the highest levels of society today. It is past time for a moral correction. Maybe that is the task that Gen Z has inherited. Moral corrections generally require institution building. And you don't have to ask anybody's permission to build institutions. Do you have 2 like-minded friends? Well, congratulations. You have already formed the Society for the Advancement of whatever it is that you 3 care about. Maybe think about making it a legal entity at some point, like a nonprofit or something. If you can't figure out how to do that, you can hire a lawyer. They usually help you to incorporate for cheap, like as a loss leader for future business that they may get out of you for being counsel to the Society for the Advancement of whatever it is. There have been efforts to organize online video content creators before. There are efforts underway now, and hopefully one of them will catch at some point. At the very least, we need a professional association to represent our interests with the platforms, with the YouTubes and the TikToks that we are making rich, without having a clear and fair system of rights and expectations to mediate disputes between creators and platforms. I'm too old and tired, but you young people should choose to participate in that institution building process. And if you want the creators that you consume to be held to a higher standard, agitate for it. Institutions are usually formed to placate the mob. So make yourself hard to placate, and you'll probably get more of what you want. From me, from Hank Green, from politicians, from business execs, from anybody. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Talk to you next time.